starting off, do you want us to tell us a little bit about Agilesphere? And I know that you guys have recently merged as well, so a little bit about that, and sort of what you do there in your role too.
Yeah, so Agilesphere is a consultancy company, and we're based in the leather market in London. And we provide experts to our clients. And so when I talk about experts, I'm talking about IT professionals that have generally got 10 years plus experience. Yeah. And they work for our clients on IT projects, delivering business change, and they use agile ways of working. Mm-hmm. So we have recently merged with Thematics. So we are now called Thematics, and Agilesphere is a Thematics company. Yeah. And the merge has been really good in that it's a real complement. So there's not been very little overlap between what each company brings to the table. Mm-hmm. We've been doing different things, we have different strengths. So it really has been a true merger. And we're working our way through our 100-day plan as we speak. And yeah, it's all going pretty good, actually.
Amazing.
Yeah, it is.
Brilliant. And what's sort of your role within, I guess, within Agilesphere, when Agilesphere was Agilesphere, and now sort of how has that changed? Has it changed at all? Has it got business?
So my role hasn't changed. There are more things going on, so there are more opportunities to get involved in things. My role itself hasn't changed. I've been at Agilesphere for 2 years, and I manage the contracts for one of our major clients, which is the Ministry of Justice, or specifically HMCTS, which is the Courts and Tribunal Service. And our contracts are to deliver IT change on the crime programme. So the crime programme is about changing the way that the courts work and changing the way that justice is administrated. So they're introducing new technologies and they're introducing more modern ways of working. So we have several contracts for that programme, and as a client principal for Agilesphere, it's my main responsibility is to make sure that the client's happy, and to manage those contracts, make sure we deliver to the outcomes on those contracts, and also the people on the ground. So these are the IT experts that are delivering the services on behalf of Agilesphere. I need to make sure that they're happy, that they're motivated, and that they're doing a really good job for us.
Amazing. So it's a multiple pronged job then, isn't it, really, doing lots of different things?
It is, and there's lots of opportunity to get involved in other side projects as well.
Yeah, no, that's awesome, because that's sort of not what you did before, was it? Because was it test and QA, wasn't it, that you were sort of in before?
Yeah,
so a little bit of a change.
It's a bit of a change. So I've always been in IT since I was about 19. Mm-hmm. I started off as a programmer. Computer programmer, but sort of more recently, I suppose, I specialised in software testing, to the point that I was teaching it, and I was setting up and running IT departments, either for consultancy companies or for end clients. So yeah, I had a real specialism for a while.
Yeah, that's because, of course, that's sort of what when I'm normally working, that's what the market that I would recruit in. So, and how come you made the jump out of there? Was there any particular reason, or was it just that this sort of role came up and you fancy something a little bit different?
So I did both roles for a while. So whilst I was working for a consultancy company and setting up a centralised testing function for a client, and it was in Manchester, and we were based in London. So it was easier for me to do the account management side as well as the delivery. So that was my first exposure, and that continued through a couple more clients where I did a bit of both. And when I joined Agilesphere, I had the opportunity to do just the account management side. And to be honest, it's a job I love. It's very flexible. It suits me for the stage of my life that I'm in at the moment. So I currently work 4 days a week. It would be much harder to do that in a delivery role. So yeah, I like the flexibility of it, and I like the fact that every day is different.
Yeah, which is lovely, isn't it? And it's also, you're dealing with people as well, which is nice, isn't it? Like if you like speaking to people, then it's a great job, I guess, to have, which is great. And you said you've always been in tech. Is that something that you always wanted to do? Because I know that a lot of people sort of tend to fall into tech, and it's just like, oh no, I'm here now, and I started, and that was it. Is that sort of the same for you, or did you?
Yeah, it absolutely is. The amount of times I've used that expression, I fell into it. So yeah, I did fall into it. I think suited my natural abilities. I think I'm very logical, systematic. I'm very organised. You know, I love a process. Before I even knew what processes were, and so yeah, it suited me. So I did kind of fall into it. Yeah.
And did you take any like traditional sort of route into tech? Did you kind of start quite sort of
not really. So it started, so at school I went to an all girls conference school, and I wasn't particularly academic, so I had the opportunity to do 2 A levels in maths and physics, and at that stage really you were to do 3 A levels, and I couldn't find a third subject. So I went to the local college, and they were running an A level in computer science for the very first time. Wow. So you didn't have to have the equivalent O level in those days, this equivalent GCSE. So I did those 3 A levels at college. But then I sort of fell out of it again. I was doing a data entry type job for a big company, and they were based down in Plymouth, which I know is your neck of the woods in your area. So they were struggling to recruit because of where they were located. They could only get people from London who wanted too much money. So they ran a huge internal training scheme. So I did a 6-week course, and I was a natural fit for it. And after that, they gave me a job as a computer programmer, and it sort of started from there. I then worked my way up through the department to project manager. I managed to get myself on a management training scheme. So that's kind of how it started.
Yeah, you see, that's amazing, because I think nowadays a lot of people sort of get pushed into university and going the degree way, and I think for a lot of people that may not be perhaps the right fit for them, and I think a lot of people may not be sort of academically minded in the fact that they can't sit in a lecture hall for 20 hours a week and concentrate, but if they're in a situation where they're being taught hands-on how to do something, it comes easier. And you know, when I was at school, in a sort of different generation, I was never encouraged into those IT and tech. Even for me, my sister, who is only 4 years old, probably will be, but see, we have a very big age gap obviously, but you know, she'll probably will be pushed in. But for me, I never was either, and I never even knew what software developer was until I moved to Bristol, and you know, from Cornwall, so there's not that many people. But it's interesting to see how that 6 weeks, because like 6 weeks is quite a short amount of time, isn't it, to sort of train into a career and, you know, be in that career for years.
It was an assessment centre, really, is, you know, is what you'd call it today. So it was 6 weeks of trying out all sorts of different things, and you know, learning a little bit of programming, doing team exercises, you know, those sorts of challenges where you're put into a small team and you go into an empty office room that's huge, and you're told to measure the volume of the room. And it's not about measuring the volume of the room, it's about how you work as a team and what ideas you bring, and, you know, how you communicate. So it was a course full of that type of stuff. And, you know, and they were constantly assessing you, and they just felt that, you know, I'd be a good fit. So, so I was just very, very lucky, I think. Right place, right time.
No, it sounds great, because I guess it'd be interesting to hear from your perspective, you know, sort of working with lots of, I guess, IT professionals who have years and years of experience. Do you tend to find that people, I mean, do you think there's any disadvantage of going down the non-traditional way, or you know, or doing a degree and sort of, you know, graduating and then getting a internship or something like that? Have you ever seen any difference in terms of?
I don't think so. So what I was going to say earlier actually is that by focusing on the degree route, we're actually missing out on a massive pool of talent. Because, like you say, not everyone is you know, cut that way to go down that route. So there are other ways to come in. And a few years back, I was working for a very large consultancy running their software department, their software testing department. We started an apprenticeship scheme. So we took on a whole load of testers through an apprenticeship, and they ranged, I think, from 17 years to 23. And in fact, 2 of them I knew personally because they were children of a friend of mine, and they now, so that maybe was 5-6 years ago, maybe longer, but they've now got really, really good established careers. They're both, you know, they've both gone in completely different directions, but, you know, they're earning really good money. They've got great prospects. So they didn't have degrees. They came in, you know, a very non-traditional route. And one, funny enough, one was female, one was male. The guy is, you know, you meet him in the street and you think, oh, he's probably a computer programmer. you know. But the woman you wouldn't, you know. But she's managed to carve a slightly different way through her career, but starting in the same place. So yeah, I think now, I think those opportunities are there. I think apprenticeships for IT are fantastic. Yeah.
Sure. And I guess, like, is there any advice that you would give to anybody who was wanting to start a career in IT? Because when I speak to some junior candidates, they often say, I just don't know where to start. You know, do I start doing a project? Do I start doing a portfolio? What language do I need to learn? You know, all these different things. Is there anything that you personally would recommend that sort of would help?
How to start? I don't think it matters, you know. I think that the IT industry it's changing all the time. It's constantly evolving. So if you have a passion for learning, you know, and you're prepared to be in a situation where you're happy to learn new things all the time. And also, I think it's important not to have a very fixed idea of what your career should be, where you should start, where you should go next, because it's an industry that's full of opportunities. And if you have a fixed idea of your path, you might not see those opportunities open up. So I think it's about, it doesn't matter where you start, it's just about networking, you know, getting to know as many people as possible and looking for those opportunities and seizing them when they come. I think that's the way it happens.
That's some really good advice. It's good to, hopefully we can pass that on to lots of people, which is awesome. And I know that when we spoke before, you mentioned about women in tech events, and that before, when Agilesphere was previously Agilesphere, that you guys sort of did some events and things like that. Do you want to tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, so I actually ended up working for Agilesphere because I attended a Women in Agile event that they hosted. So we went to Somerset House, did a little bit of ice skating, and then we went on to do something called Lean Cocktail, which is a spin on lean coffee. So the idea is that you're going to have a discussion around a particular topic. So in this case, it's women in agile. But using this method, you end up with a very collaborative agenda. So somebody doesn't decide this is what we're going to talk about. So the way it works is that everybody takes some Post-its and they write down questions or ideas that they want to discuss, talk about, and they all get put in the middle of the table. They then get sorted in case, you know, some are very similar, so they get grouped together. And then you get points. So you get, say, 3 or 5 points each, and you allocate your points to the Post-its by putting dots on them that you want to prioritize, because they're the ones you really want to speak about. So you can put all 5 points on one Post-it, or you can share them out across different Post-its. Then they get gathered up and they get prioritized, and you pick the one with the highest number of points and you start to discuss it. So the person who wrote the Post-it would introduce it, you get a discussion, it goes on for, say, 3 minutes, and then at the end of 3 minutes you all vote as to whether you want to continue or end the discussion. And if you continue, you get another 2 minutes, and then you move on to the next Post-it. So yeah, it's and so they're the sorts of events that Agilesphere are running, and hopefully we, after this lockdown finishes and we can start meeting up more, we will start to relaunch those and then run them for thematics.
Yeah, that's amazing.
They're great fun.
Yeah, I like hearing like new events and meetups ideas, because, you know, I help sort of Samantha Miller, one of our recruiters, with Southwest Test, and we have quite a lot of people come, but we sometimes struggle with ideas on how to make it interesting, I guess. Yeah. So that's a really good.
It's good for small groups, and it's good for breakout sessions, you know, because I think it's a very inclusive way to network, where you don't have to feel like you have to go up to somebody and introduce yourself, you know, and not know what to talk about. It gets you talking very naturally.
Yeah, that's amazing. And have you got any sort of upcoming that you're maybe attending yourself?
So I attend some of yours, because you do remote ones, and I also attend some called Grow It. So it's Growing Women in IT, and they're run by Stott and May. They're local for me. They're in Reading mostly. I go to those quite a lot. They have very good talkers. They tend to do quite big events.
Amazing. So, I'm going to try and get myself along to some, I think, once this is all over, we can go to actual events again, which would be lovely. And I guess, sort of moving on to your own personal experience as a woman in tech, I've done a couple of interviews, and for me what stood out is the women that I've spoken to have at some point during their career felt what some people call imposter syndrome. Is that something that you've ever felt before at all?
Oh, definitely. I very certainly at the beginning of my career, I often had that feeling that someone was going to come and tap me on the shoulder and go, "Hey, up, what are you up to?"
You blog it.
I've got your number.
Yeah.
And it's also something I've spoken about quite a lot because, you know, I did feel it very strongly. And what I've discovered though, it's not just women that feel it, you know, some men have this as well. So I've really just come to think that it's part of my personality. You know, it's just ingrained in me. So it comes and goes. I don't have it all the time now, but I do have moments, I guess. If I've put myself outside of my comfort zone a little bit, I'll start to think, you know.
Yeah. I think we all feel that sometimes, though. Yeah, I push myself a bit too far here. I don't think I can play that really hard song on the piano in front of everybody. So that sort of thing. Yeah, I completely understand. And I guess, you know, if that's something that you've maybe felt yourself, do you think that is something that can be combated potentially for that particular organisation, or do you think that's more of sort of a personal thing?
I think it does affect people based on their personality. But I think ways to combat it, it's very good, I think, to have a mentor, and not always someone you work with. You know, LinkedIn is very good for finding mentors. If you can, like, if you get on well with somebody, say, at one part of your career, and then you move on to a new role, maybe you should keep that person as a mentor for a while, you know? So it's very good to have somebody to bounce those feelings off and to talk about why you're having them, you know, and why that's an internal feeling and not necessarily the perception of the world outside. So I think that can help.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I guess the big question is how do you think we can encourage more women into tech? Because for us, as from the recruiting side, we have, of course, companies approaching us all the time and saying, you know, we want to build diverse teams. For us, creating a short list of candidates who fit in a diverse spectrum isn't the right way of doing things. What we do is we try and get our reach out to as many people and as many diverse pools of people as we can to then therefore bring the talent in from all sorts of walks of life. But it's a fact that there's not as many women in IT. Just if you look at the numbers, for us, we think it sort of starts at the school level. But I guess for you, and you know, you've worked in tech for years and years, is there anything that you think we can do to encourage women in tech and sort of, I guess, say, you know, it is a really diverse place, you know, it's becoming a more diverse sector to work in, so don't sort of worry about it.
So you do now get a smattering of women in most areas of tech, but it is a smattering. I was thinking about this earlier. So on one of our contracts, we have 15 developers and only one of them is female. So that made me think. And there are other areas where you might tend to get more women, perhaps in the project management, delivery management space, and particularly business analysts, testers, the UX professionals, the researchers, the designers, user interaction designers. Even so, I find more girls are taking those subjects at school, you know, that lead into those careers. So that's a good thing. But actually, I agree with you about it's when they're young. I think it's even younger than 4. So some of the research that I've looked at, it basically says that because we don't encourage young girls to play with construction type toys, they generally stop doing that by the time they're 3 or 4. It actually limits their brain development. So they're less likely to have a way of thinking that leads them into an engineering type career, which is why we won't see as many girls who are developers. So I really think we need to go back to, you know, preschool and think about the toys that our children play with. And maybe, I mean, there are a lot of movements. I know a lot of my friends who have got daughters, you know, granddaughters, and they're all talking about gender neutral toys, gender neutral clothing. You know, it seems to be quite a big movement at the moment. But I think as far as the toys are concerned, we need to start doing that, because no matter what level of PR you do to try and attract females into this profession, if they don't have that way of thinking or that mindset, they're not going to find it appealing.
Of course. And also, a lot of people could potentially argue that taking a professional on who isn't able to do certain skills matched up to a male participant, it would be unfair to hire that person just because they are female, and that in itself is sort of discrimination. It's very tricky, isn't it, to sort of hire the right person for the right job, and that's hard when the talent pool is so small.
I suppose my advice to women who feel that they want to go into sort of an IT career and they feel that they're up against, you know, technical wizards or engineering type minds, that maybe they should focus more on their softer skills and their transferable skills. If you understand yourself, you know how you learn, and you're able to learn quickly, you're able to communicate well, you know, written, verbally. I would focus on those types of things. You know, a big attribute is if you're able to solve problems, and if you can do something in one area and then apply that same skill in a slightly different area, you know, that will really help you. And you often find people who are very technically minded can't do that, you know, because they're very focused. So it's about playing to your strengths. And no matter, you know, if you've got a team of developers, they still need to be a team. You don't want them all to be exactly the same. You want to have a variety of skills and strengths across that team. And so I think, for women who do want to get into this sort of career, maybe they should focus on those skills.
No, that's really good advice. And I think that's sort of everything in terms of women. So thank you so much for talking to me.